The Via Stoica podcast with Brendan and Benny. Powered by viastoica.com, your home for coaching, workshops, quotes, and Stoic content that inspires. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Via Stoica podcast. My name is Benny. I'm your host for this episode. And today we're going to talk about socializing like a Stoic. How do we do that in the proper way? And this comes off the back of an interview that I saw made by Scott Galloway on Bill Maher's Real Time. I will leave the link to this to that episode in the description if you want to follow or watch it. I definitely recommend watching it. It's an interesting interview, and maybe you have different takes. And if you do have different takes, please let me know. I do think Scott Galloway is an interesting guy. He makes some really good points, and also just points that are just a little bit different from all the other things that you hear, right? He has a different view on it. He writes about that in his book, The Algebra of Wealth, where he talks about Stoicism, right? That's one of the parts in this formula of creating wealth for yourself. Although I do think that depiction of Stoicism lacks a lot of depth, and it's really just scratching the surface and sometimes even touching on some of those ideas that are commonly believed that are not really Stoic philosophy. So if you do read a book, and you might find the Stoic section a little bit light and wanting for more, and sometimes even a little bit. This isn't really a philosophy that was truly meant. But he brings it on, and I think it's a good point that he adds it to the equation. Where Stoicism is mentioned. I think that's a good. Not always, by the way, not always. It has to be mentioned in the right way, and he tries. He does his best. But he has interesting points on life, on things in general. So definitely, suggest watching him, but remain critical and keep your own opinions and your own views. That's always the important thing, especially when you watch things online, even with these episodes, right? I'm just saying it from my point of view, and I'm trying to look at how the Stoics would think about it, but use your own mind. That's what I'm saying. We're not here to turn people into Stoics. We're here to inspire people to create their own philosophy of life. And whether that's with Stoicism or with other philosophies, it is important to start thinking for yourself, to start creating the life that you want. And this is really key of what we're going to discuss here today as well. But before we dive right in, please like and subscribe to all the wonderful things, and leave comments, right? If you hear something and you're thinking about a certain topic that you would like me to discuss, let me know. Or if you don't agree, let me know. If you have other views, if you have additions, please also leave a comment. We really appreciate that. And also subscribe to the newsletter, The Pause. It's been steadily growing, getting some really good reviews and some really good comments there. And that's just a moment of one time of the month where you get to reflect. And these are kind of like mini courses where you get to learn more about the philosophy, how to practice it, some book reviews, and also some other additional information there. So thanks everybody for subscribing and for reading it. It really means a lot to me. But let's dive right in. And again, if you need help with any of this, you can always book a free consultation on viastoica.com and get in touch with me so we can have a little chat and see how we can help you further. But let's get along. In this clip, again, the link is in the description. In this clip, Bill Maher and Scott Galloway are talking. They're talking about the loneliness epidemic, right? And in that clip, they talk about alcohol. And Scott Galloway goes on to say that the second reason is the remote work, and the first reason for people to be so lonely or isolated, especially among young men, is the anti-alcohol movement. And I want to dive right into that, right? I want to go and see why I don't agree with it, why I think there's something more deeper that we can use, why I think it's just an excuse and just one way to say this is the problem, while the problem is far deeper than this. Maybe it's just sound bites, right? Maybe it's because you're there, you want to get a round of applause, you want to get some sound bites. So that's an easy way to tell people how to live and how to be more social. And maybe it's just an easy kind of fix, but it's the long-term fix. So let's dive right in to the episode, and let's see what we can do, right? So is there a loneliness problem? Yes, there is, of course. And I think it isn't just for men. I think it's for women as well. For one, I think one of the best cures for loneliness is to find solitude, right? And why is that? It sounds a little bit like a contradiction, but if you can find solitude, if you can find being by yourself, being comfortable by yourself, finding that steady base, that balance where you say, hey, you know what? I have my flaws. I have my strengths. I accept myself fully. I can be with myself. I can go and read in a coffee shop by myself. I can go to a restaurant by myself. I can do things by myself. But a lot of people, they tend to look for, they need validation from outside, and then they get rejected and they start going into this little bubble, and then they find that connection, if you will, online, right? Where they talk about these men sitting in the basements, going online, going watching adult content or whatever, or going into video games or chat rooms or whatever, where they think they are making real life connections. And I think that that's where we get mistaken, right? That's where our brain just kind of goes into these algorithms and say, oh, this is what I want to see, right? Even if you go, and it happens to me sometimes as well. I open my phone and I go onto Instagram or YouTube shorts or whatever, and I just end scrolling. And then at one point you're an hour away, but you get these instant dopamine hits, right? Because these algorithms know exactly what you're looking for. They only need a few seconds, a few clips. You're watching a few clips, staying on one a little bit longer, and suddenly that's your feed. And that's really what they're looking for. They're trying to hook you. They're trying to get you there. They're trying to win your attention and get you addicted to the content. And that's really where we start to go. And then suddenly we feel connected, right? We feel, but I'm micro learning here. I'm doing all of these things, right? And that's where they really zone you in. They really take you in. And then your self-esteem gets attached to these little dopamine hits. And then when you go outside into the real world and talk to those people, the attention span is not is required as longer, right? Because the attention span that is required is longer, because people don't talk in sound bites all the time, and you need to listen, right? The dreadful thing of listening to someone else. So that's where a lot of these difficulties come with interaction with people. And then if we look at men, from personal experience, men get rejected a lot, right? And if you get rejected and rejected, you get rejected by women, you get rejected by a job, you get rejected by these things. And this happens to women as well, right? We all get rejected and we get things that we don't want. If we don't get things that we want, then suddenly this little bubble that we create for ourselves feels safe. We can stay here. We can do all the things that we want to do there without being judged or without being rejected. And then suddenly we can create this little bubble, this fortress of solitude, of loneliness, isolation, if you will, and that feels safe, right? So there's a lot of shortcuts for us to kind of go into that and just stay out of the socializing life. And to be honest, I've had phases like that as well, where again, this lone wolf persona that we get projected is like, wow, yes, you got to be a lone wolf, right? You got to go and fend for yourself. And this is again this toxic masculinity, the manosphere, the broicism, where you got to be the lone wolf. You got to separate yourself from society. You got to go and drive your own path. And that's furthest from the truth of what Stoic philosophy is all about. And I can imagine. So there's this there's this narrative that puts us in a place, right? Especially these young men, why they want to put them in this isolation, because then they can mold them, they can build them towards for their own benefits. But let's look at what, when we talk about this clip that Scott Galloway is talking about, right? First, about the remote work. Okay, yes, I agree that remote work is definitely not the best way to go, because you want to be able to socialize, you want to go to people, right? But even in offices, people can be utterly lonely. This is sometimes that we forget. Even if you're in a relationship, you can feel completely lonely, because if that connection isn't there and you're staying there for the wrong reasons, you're not going to find that need that you have. You can feel completely lonely, and it will limit the socializing facts that you can make. So maybe saying you need to get married, you need to have kids, you need to follow these things. No, you need to do them when they are the right thing to do. You shouldn't just get married or have kids because that will then make you feel happy. No, you should do it because you have found the right person. You're doing it because you feel that that's something that in that moment it's the right thing to do. But your happiness and your good life shouldn't depend on whether you have or have not a wife or a husband, or have not kids. It shouldn't depend on it. Life can happen, right? Many different things. Like myself, I'm divorced, and now my path to having a family and kids is different. It changed. But that doesn't mean that my life is suddenly a failure because I don't. No, I'll make it happen. I'll give it value. I'll do it in the right way, in my way. So again, these are the things that sometimes we are thrown into, right? Like our happiness depends on these kind of things, but we've got to find the right connections. We've got to find the right thing. So if you go to when he talks about remote work is the worst thing that could happen, why? If you work remotely, you have so much more time. You can then, after your work, you can go and do things. You can find the hobbies that you like. You can go out there, and still you have connections online. Yes, they're not human connections, but I've worked in many places. I had okay connections with the people that I worked with, but they weren't necessarily my friends. Yes, there were social connections, but I would meet with my friends after work. And with remote work, you can have more time to do that, right? So again, it feels like this is just an excuse, just to kind of a label to say, oh, this is the blame. No, we can always make it happen, right? Is it conducive for social behavior? No, it isn't, right? Again, I'm talking to a camera. It would be far greater to be talking to you in person. But this is one way to get out there. Remote work. I do remote work. Why? Because it allows me to live the life that I want to live. I've established it that way. And then I can make social connections outside of it. Again, it's an easy excuse. But then we get to the point where he talks about alcohol, right? He says the anti-alcohol movement that's the number one problem why we have this loneliness epidemic. And it's, let's face it, right? Okay, and I'm from the Netherlands, and I know there's a saying in the US that say, "Oh, we've got to have some Dutch courage, right? Have a few drinks, lubricate your mind, lubricate your tongue, and talk, right? Be able to be social, speak to people, and that's it." And I've experienced this, as people know. Like, I've now been sober for 5 years, but I used to drink heavily. I used to drink a lot. I used to drink socially mainly. I never really drank at home because I wasn't a big fan of drinking. I didn't like alcohol because I know how it made me feel. But when I went socially, I used to go drinking. And in the clip, Scott Galloway says, like, think of all the friends that you've made, and how they connected. And there's got to be alcohol involved and how you made those real friends. And yes, I have made some good friends while who I drank with a lot. But I'm sure that they would have been my good friends even without the alcohol. And why? Because those are the few friends that I still speak with. And there's others that I used to drink with a lot, and I don't speak to them anymore. I've got a great example when I went to Spain, and I lived there for the first year. I used to go out with this group of people, and we would go out and drink every time, we'd go to the places or whatever. I thought that these were very good connections, very good friends. And then a year later, I left. Then a year later, I came back to Spain during my birthday. I was like, okay, let's see if these same friends from a year ago were still there. Most of them were. We used to drink and hang out together. Let's see if they want to join me on my birthday because they're my friends. I didn't want to go to the pub that they usually went to. Let's go to a Spanish pub. I wanted to go there and have some chats and whatever. I waited for 45 minutes in the pub alone. No one showed up. I went to the other pub that they used to. Everybody was there. Oh yeah, we forgot this and that. I stayed there for one drink. I felt so alien in that place, and I left. I asked myself, are these the real connections that I've built? Right? So even if alcohol is such a social lubricant, it isn't the solution. The connections, yes, we can meet people there, but the connection isn't built there. It might have been started, but the real connection is built elsewhere, with people that you spend time with, that you do activities with, that you go outside of the bar with. And one of the things is like, why is this topic so big? No, it's a common ritual. Alcohol is something that is so socially acceptable. Like, when I stopped drinking, people were, I don't know, maybe afraid. People were just trying to convince me to keep drinking. They're trying to say, hey, you got to drink again because you're not part of it. You're falling out of the social class. And I didn't want to, I didn't feel like it was necessary. And now I go to parties, I have conversations until like 11 or 12 o'clock in the evening when everybody gets too drunk to have a good conversation, and I leave. And I have a good conversation because I can still listen to them. I can understand. I can remember what's happening. Right? Because I was one of those people that would just be so drunk that I couldn't even, have a decent conversation. I couldn't even speak again. Yes, we had great adventures. And I don't say that people shouldn't drink, but I also don't want to say that you have to drink to be social. There's so many other ways. And yes, a good drink, if you can control it, right? And if it doesn't control you, go ahead, have a few drinks. But be mindful of what it does, because alcohol isn't a good thing. Right? It gives you that temporary confidence in that evening, but afterwards, it's, at the end of the day, it's a depressant, right? It really slows down all your mental capabilities. Again, I'm using my own example. I would wake up the next day feeling depressed, feeling horrible. First of all, because I couldn't remember what I'd done. I felt physically bad. I didn't know if I made a fool of myself. I didn't want to speak to people. Maybe this is an extreme case, but if you are drinking more and more alcohol in the evening itself, it's fine. But then the next day, you're not going to feel good. You're going to feel tired. You're going to feel physically fit, and that reduces your confidence, reduces how well you feel of yourself. And then you either got to go back to drinking, or you got to go find other dopamine hits, and you're not going to have parties every night. And then where are those people that you met the day before? Are they still going to be there? Are they still going to help you out? Are they still going to do other social things with you? You still got to do those things. You can't at every point, at every social event, go and drink, right? So that's one of those things you are then depending on an external factor to be social. I say you don't need it. Do I say that everybody's got to stop drinking? That's for you to decide. I made my decision because I know that it's the right thing for me to do. But you've got to decide, can I control this? Is this something that helps me, that benefits me, or do I not feel good in the long term? Maybe in the evening it's nice. And do I need it to socialize? Can I socialize in other ways? Anyway, we'll get into that a little bit. Now, why Stoic philosophy would be a better way to say, how can we solve this loneliness epidemic, right? And let's talk about everyone, right? Because there's so many lonely people out there. How can we really use Stoic philosophy to help this loneliness epidemic? Because Stoic philosophy in its core is very pro-social. A lot of people think that Stoic philosophy is this selfish, isolating philosophy that just tells you got to focus on what you're doing yourself. You got to focus on your own tasks and whatever, and the rest of the world is external, so you don't care about that at all. But if you read Stoic philosophy and if you really delve into it, you see that it's all ingrained. And let's start from the beginning. The nature and the idea of physics in Stoic philosophy is that we're all one. We are all part of the same cosmos, right? We're all part of the same logos. We've got to work together, like the fingers of a hand, like the feet of the feet and the toes, and we all got to work together. We're all part of each other. And that's why if I do something, then everybody else gets affected by it. So my duty is to do the best thing that I can do from my own perspective for the benefit of the whole. And that's how Stoic philosophy puts the responsibility on ourselves. And that's a scary idea, right? That I'm responsible for, first of all, my own happiness, right? My own good life and the well-being of the rest of the world. That's a lot of things to bear. And that's why a lot of people don't really want that and prefer to go to something like alcohol, prefer to find other excuses why they say, oh, I can't be social because these things inhibit me. No, you've still got a duty. You've still got agency to go about and do your things. And the good thing about it is if you use a philosophy like Stoicism that has as a core center to know yourself, you will find the connections that you are really looking for, that are really so meaningful for yourself because they are aligned with who you are. And you can identify other connections that are not beneficial to you because you have the confidence, because you have the objective scanning process to see if these people are good for me or not. That's what we've got to look for. And that's, again, we're building up. So use philosophy to get to know yourself. What is the best social lubricant? It's confidence. I watched this clip by Gary Vaynerchuk. This woman comes up to him and she asks him, listen, I have a kid. I think it was a daughter. And I'm very, very nervous about them going online, watching the content, maybe meeting wrong people, all of these things, right? All of these dangers. And what Gary answered there really struck a chord with me. He said, like, I have a daughter myself, and I've been thinking about this for a long time, right? And I'll see if I can find the clip, and I'll put it in a link as well. He says, the best thing you can do is to build up their confidence, right? To make sure that they are confident about themselves, that they know how to evaluate the input, that they know that certain things aren't well for them, that they know that certain connections or what people ask, that they are not good for them, and that they can find and make a strong base for themselves to have good judgments of what's happening around them. And if you are confident in who you are, then you can go into any social gathering, you can talk about it, and you can filter out like, oh, I don't really want to, this person doesn't align with me, or this person has different values. I don't really want to talk to this person because I just simply don't align. And with this person, yes, with this person as well, because you know who you are, because you know what interests you, and you can then better and from a more neutral and objective point test other people around you. And that's what Seneca says. It goes Seneca. He says, with your friends, you got to first test them and then and then trust them completely. But you need to do that from a good base, not from something like alcohol, not from something like not from something like alcohol, right? Not from something like other points, other externals, other stimulants. You've got to do it from yourself, from your own base. And here we go to this next point of oikeiosis. This is a thing that Stoics really understood well. It's that the idea of self-appropriation, right? We do every being does everything out of self-preservation. We want to procreate. We want to stay alive, right? That's what we see, what the animals do, the plants, all of that stuff. But the Stoics understand, like, we are given this gift, right? The divine gift by nature, reason and logic. Our idea of self-appropriation should be a little bit higher. It should be guarding our character, our soul. Right? Again, if you want to have a family, great, but that shouldn't be the reason why you're happy or why you're having a good life. That should come from within. And that's something that we've got to protect. And again, we can only do that if we make the right moral choice. When we read Marcus Aurelius, when we read Epictetus, we can see the three Stoic disciplines. We've created the three Stoic disciplines framework for our coaching as well to help you see what are your judgments, what are you basing your judgments on, what beliefs, what are the desires, what are you going for, and how do you find the right actions. And all of those line up to make that moral choice, right? For the proeresis that we're talking about, that is the thing that if we want to talk about freedom, that's our free will, right? We have our choice to make. And if we do that the right thing, then the people around us will see who we are, see that we're doing the right thing for the bigger picture, and people will flock to us. They will come to you. You don't have to go and look for them, right? So again, if you do the right thing, if you make the moral choice, if you do what's supposed to be done, your duties, your responsibility, people will come to you. You set the right example, you emulate the good life, people will come to you. So there's so many ways of being more social instead of just drinking more alcohol or finding a job in an office. Those are all externals, right? That's something that we shouldn't rely on when we need to be social. We do need to be more social. Yes, I agree with that. But there are more structured, more foundational ways of doing so. Now we've got to contribute. We've got to do our things, right? Marcus Aurelius talks in his meditations, and he's the emperor of the Roman Empire, mind you. Right? He says, like, at dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I have to go to work as a human being. And then he goes on to say other things, but we have to go to work as a human being. We have to do our duties. We have to go out there. And if you're struggling to find work, do something. If you think like, oh, I've got to go and have this high paying whatever job, no, go and do something, find a job and build yourself up from there. Do something else, contribute. But don't just stay in bed and think like, oh, this is far more comfortable. No, the good life isn't necessarily comfortable. The good life is doing what you have to do. And I used to do this myself, put myself into that victim mentality. Oh, I'm never going to find a job. Oh, everybody hates me. No one likes me. It's like, but I'm not giving them an excuse to like me. I'm not making it easier for them to give me a job. Why? Because I'm not putting in my effort. You got to show up. You got to show up as yourself. You got to do that hard work on the inside. You got to say, hey, do I want to be social? Okay, let me go out. Let me go do activities. And they're great things. If you are somewhere struggling, like I travel a lot, so it's very difficult to make new friends instantly, but there are apps like Meetup, which I use a lot. And I do my Stoic walks on them, but there's so many great activities out there. You just go on the app, Meetup, you look for your environment, you look for your area and see if there are things that people do. I've had people I work with that are now hosting their own Stoic events. Go out and host them or find others and then be inspired and do the same. There's so many things like the internet. People are saying like with AI, the internet, all these apps, yes, there are negative sides, but there's so many positives as well. They are tools and you need to learn how to use them. So contribute, find something that you can give, and then people will come to you. Now, again, when we go back to that topic, right, about alcohol, and I've had my experiences with it, and I've had some really meaningful, and I still have some meaningful friendships based on it. But the alcohol drinking was just moments, right? The real friendships, they were forged in other moments when you are doing stuff together, when you're just hanging out, finding the same hobbies, when you're finding the same activities that you like. For example, for me, it was football, right? For the American soccer, other things, right? And now also reading and Stoicism. That helped me find groups that are like-minded. And when you find those groups, again, first you need to know what you like, what your interests are. But when you find those groups and you can really connect there and go out there, right? Meet them. I've met so many great people during my travels. It's amazing. But you've got to show them who you are, right? And that's one way to open a door for a social connection. And those are the meaningful connections that you can build. Those are the ones that really are on the same level. They talk to you. You can have deep conversations. You can build that trust. You can be vulnerable. You can show who you are. And a lot of people are scared of that because if they know who I am, they might use it against me. But if you find the right people, you can be open. You can share all the things that you need. And those are the connections that you want. And then you don't need many. You don't need 100 friends. If you have 2 or 3 good friends that you can call on, that you can reach out to, that you can go to in the moments that you need it, the moments to celebrate your victories and the moments when you are down on your luck, those are the ones that you need. All the others, you can have social connections, you can talk to people, and that's important. But that core group of people around you, those are vital, those are key. And that could be family, that could be friends, could be anyone, but find those meaningful connections. And maybe you meet them online, and maybe you can get to meet them in person, but find those connections, right? Real life is far better than online, but hey, it isn't always an option for everyone. I come from a tiny, tiny village. I know myself, there's not many people there, so it's difficult to find like-minded people. That's why for Stoic philosophy, I had to go online. And luckily, I have the privilege to travel. I get to meet other people during those travels, which is great, but that's not a given for everyone. But find who you are and find those connections around you. So as we close this episode up, it was something that I'm passionate about. Maybe you've heard that. Maybe you've heard it in my speech. Because the advice that Scott Galloway gives there in Bill Maher's, and Bill Maher's talks about the safetyism, right? We all have to be safe. No, life isn't here to make us safe. We just have to deal, as Stoic philosophy says, we have to accept fate. We have to deal with what is given to us in the best way possible. And whatever happens, we can still be a good human being. We can still make the right choice. But the advice that is given here is to drink more alcohol, to be more social. That isn't the right advice. I've been very lucky during my drinking days that I'm still here, that I haven't had anything really bad happen to me. And that might not be the same case for anyone. The risk is too high. It's not just the liver, as they say in the clip. There's so many other risks involved with this, and it's just not worth it. If you can control it, again, have a few drinks. If you need that little, 1 or 2 glasses of social lubricant, great. But also ask yourself, why do you need it? Build yourself up, raise your confidence to say, I don't need alcohol to be social. I can just go there to speak with someone. And if they don't like what I have to say, they can leave or I can leave. Great. I can find someone else. Because that social lubricant is needed to deal with the possible rejection. And then if you get rejected, you go, I don't know. So find the strength within, find your confidence, find your philosophy of life. Stoicism really helps with that, to find your duties, to focus on your responsibility, to be a good human being for yourself and the world around, and then the social connections will follow. I've seen it happen myself. I've experienced it, especially since I've been on this journey with Via Stoica and with Stoic philosophy. It's been wonderful. You've got to find what makes you tick and then do that. Contribute, share with the world. People will come to you. Anyway, thank you for listening. If you like this episode, subscribe, leave a comment, see what you think about how to best become a social human being, what you think of alcohol as that glue, that Dutch courage, the social lubricant, how you feel about that. Let me know in the comments. Subscribe to the podcast, leave a rating, subscribe to the newsletter as well. And if you do struggle with this, if you do struggle with socializing and with loneliness, book a free consultation on the via Stoica.com. We'll get in touch. We'll talk about it and we'll see how we can help you to find better ways to get out of that loneliness bubble and to be more social. Anyway, thank you for listening. We'll hope to see you in the next one. Thank you for listening to the Via Stoica podcast. If you have enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing, rating, and leaving a review. Your feedback will help us reach more like-minded people on the journey to self-improvement. If you want to get in touch with us or find more information, you can go to viastoica.com, your one-stop platform for all things Stoicism and living better. And remember, virtue is the only good.